I don't get applause very often, so I don't know what to do with it. So it's great to be part of Sarah's team and actually getting the people work. We're actually not far from my neighborhood here in Colorado Springs. So it's great that we're hosting us here in my hometown now for the last 10 years. Also wanted to mention we have Representative Ty Winter came in a few minutes ago. So, it changes a
percentage will go from 7.2 down to 6.7, and then also in business rates, that currently is at 29%. That will go down to 25.9%. But it also allows homeowners to reduce the valuation of their home as well by $50,000. And so those two things together will provide really significant relief. But at the same time, it also solves one of these issues that has been kind of a conundrum for a while, and that's around the senior property tax exemption. Currently, if seniors move, they lose that exemption. And in this now, the exemption becomes portable. And so if people move, they still will be able to get that exemption as seniors. And so that's a really big component of this as well. And then the last piece is it does put a cap on future. It allows for a smaller increases over time instead of the giant ones we're looking at currently if nothing is done. Okay, so here's digging in just a little bit deeper on some of the specifics around each of these components. So particularly savings for homeowners, this is kind of how some of the numbers work out. You get $50,000 in reduced valuation. The percentage itself changes, and then also this is kind of how it looks in real dollars. Okay, so $1,000 in the first year, and then continuing on over $3,000 over successive years. So significant money in that area alone. So here's another example on a table based on your actual residential property value. Okay, so you can see that it's pretty proportionate depending on where your property value may be. Now, seniors, this is also actually a really interesting component of this. So, like I said before, many seniors enjoy, this is one of the big features that many seniors enjoy when we have Tabor surplus in our system. They get a senior housing exemption, they get to take out the first $100,000 on their house. This one allows an additional reduction on the first year, and then successive years allows for additional reductions as well as exemptions. And then the last part, like I said, this is now portable. So a lot of seniors who don't have kids in the house anymore want to downsize. They are afraid to lose that property tax exemption. This way they're allowed to keep it with them. And now savings for renters. There's been a lot of discussion about renters. I tell you, renters will be severely hurt if nothing is done, simply because the current way the rates are going to go up, obviously that will be passed on in rent. And particularly for those who are on the margins, being able to pay rent right now, their housing will be very, very vulnerable. So there's two ways that renters can see some relief out of this. Number one, any savings that the landlord gets in property tax savings can be passed on to their rental, and it won't change the overall structure or profitability of a landlord's situation. And then secondly, they have built in a specific fund to provide additional rental relief as well. Now, savings for businesses. The main savings for business is the reduction in the business property tax rate, and those of you who are business owners have definitely experienced the upward pressure over the last few years before Gallagher was repealed, because that was going to go through the roof. And now we are starting to be able to create some more balance in this overall situation. And this will be an example of continuing that. All right, and then obviously something near and dear to my heart. There's also included in this a mechanism where we are able to use a small piece of the Tabor surplus to be able to backfill the loss in revenue for schools and local government. And that's why we say this is responsible. Colorado is already near the bottom in school funding in the nation. And if we had no backfill or no relief in this area, we would be in serious trouble. We're already struggling to be able to keep staff in our schools as it is, and this would definitely exacerbate the problem if it is not passed. Now, this is the mechanism that is creating kind of the difference in Tabor refunds, I guess, or the way this mechanism, or the way we're going to backfill. By keeping an additional 1% on the state budget, that will then allow us to have a little bit more space to be able to backfill some of this property tax reduction over these 10 years. Okay, and this is what it looks like projected out over the 10 years of the plan. And so that's basically it in a nutshell. The other thing here is there's a lot of talk about Tabor refunds as well. This also flattens your Tabor refund, and everybody, regardless of where you are of income, everybody gets more than they did last year. Last year it was approximately 750. This year it's approximately 862 across the board if this passes. And so for many people, not only will their property tax go down, but their Tabor refund would actually go up. And I'll close it out there, and because I hear my time is getting low. Thank you.
Would you like?
Okay.
However you all want to use your time.
All right, that would be great. Hi, I'm Rose Puglisi. I am in the House. I represent House District 14, which is Northern Colorado Springs. Really glad to be with you. Prior to my service in state legislature, I was a county commissioner on the Western Slope for 8 years and have a lot of experience in property tax. So I'm going to say a couple of key things and then turn it over to my counterpart, Senator Kirkmeyer, for her perspective. So I want to just tell you a couple of things that I want you to remember. First is the government does not need your permission to decrease your taxes. They can decrease your taxes without a vote of the people. They only need your permission to increase your taxes. So why do we have any change if we're decreasing your taxes? So that's a good question for you to ask. There is a great property tax calculator for individuals that I want to direct your attention to. You don't have to take a politician's word for it. It's called mypropertytaxco.com. You can see your savings in property tax versus what you're going to be giving up in your taxpayer bill of rights refunds. I encourage everyone to take a look at that. On schools, I want to say I'm a single mom of 2 kids, and they are 9 and 12 in our public school system. Part of D11 is also in my district. I am incredibly, as a mom, really concerned about education funding and making sure our education is properly funded. The legislature could have done that. The legislature has a constitutional obligation to fund education and has not met that obligation, which Senator Kirkmeyer will get into more detail about, so I don't want to take her thunder. But we should be fully funding education in the way we are constitutionally required to do. The legislature has not done it. You don't need HH to do it. The state's budget is $38.5 billion, the largest in Colorado's history. We have the money. It is not a revenue problem, it's a prioritization problem. And so we should be having that conversation. The other thing I want to leave you with before I turn it over to Senator Kirkmeyer is the state legislature could have and should have lowered your property taxes. We could have done that in a very simple bill that did not require voter approval, because we can just lower the state assessment rate and your property taxes would be lower. The state legislature chose not to do that. They instead chose to bring you HH. They chose not to fully fund education so that they can have some backing as to why you need to give up your TAPER refunds for education. It's not fair, it's not right, and I'll have Senator Kirkmeyer go into more detail. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. I'm Senator Barb Kirkmeyer, and I've been a state senator for 3 years. Prior to this, I served as a Weld County Commissioner for 20 years. And here's what I know. If you want something really screwed up, give it to the legislature to try and fix, because that's what's going on here with Proposition HH. Representative Puglisi is correct. We don't need Proposition HH to lower property taxes. We just don't need it. There are 3 things that affect your property taxes. The first thing is the value of your home or value of your property, which is set by the market. The second thing is the assessment rate, which is set by the legislature, and we can lower it without a vote. In fact, we've done that. We did it last year. We've done it before. We can do it again. And the third thing is the mill levy, which is set by local governments, local taxing entities. And they can float their mill levy down and then back up. So we didn't need Proposition HH to address the property tax issue. Now, proponents of this bill, the Senator Fenberg and Senator Hansen on the Senate side, would come in and tell you, gosh, we need to do something about property taxes. And I'm like, that would be great. Let's lower the assessment ratio. They wouldn't do that. But they came back and said, well, we need this for numerous reasons. And they introduced their bill 7 days before the session was over. Great opportunity for public comment, right? Great, good government. 7 days before that. In fact, the last bill that the Senate voted on completely was this bill, Proposition HH. It was on the last day of session about 10:30 at night. I don't know why they had to rush it through, but they told us it's because they really didn't know what was going to happen with property taxes. Now, those of us who have been county commissioners, and I see a couple former county commissioners here as well, along with Rose and I, we all know that last June they knew this was going to be an issue. They had a full year. The governor took a full year, messing around down in his office on the first floor, instead of talking to the people on the second floor or to local governments to find a problem. So proponents have told you that we need this to get real property tax relief. The reality is your property taxes are still going up because your values are going up. And in every other year, we have a reappraisal year, your values will go up again, your property taxes are going to go up again. Gallagher was not the issue. Gallagher was a safety net and kept our property taxes on the residential side low. So I get it, like commercial businesses, commercial properties are saying, God, we kind of like it that our assessment rate is going to drop down to 25.5%. That's a really good thing. What we all need to realize, and I would think most businesses, because NFIB is proposed, so the national is opposed, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, small businesses, is opposed to HH, because they realize property values are going to go up. So their taxes are still going to go up. This is not a fix. In fact, again, your property taxes will increase. If Proposition HH passes, it will be the greatest scam that this governor and our Democrat colleagues have pulled off in Colorado. Property taxes go up. And what you get for that is to give up your TABOR refund. Because your TABOR refund check, remember that $750 that you got last year in the check? That goes away. So property taxes continue to go up, and your TABOR refund check goes away. Sound like a great deal to you? Because it doesn't to me. Now, again, proponents of Proposition HH like to say we need this because we need education funding. Couldn't be farther from the truth. Could not be farther from the truth. In fact, this state is sitting on nearly $5 billion of unrestricted reserves and fund balances to fund education. This legislature and previous legislatures for the last 14 years have decided not to follow the Constitution, because the Constitution requires that we fully fund a free public school system throughout the state of Colorado. And then the Constitution, back in 2000, Amendment what was it? Amendment 23, thank you so much. Amendment 23 passed that said education was supposed to be increased by inflation. And it's a little bit more broader than that, or complicated than that, but that's essentially what it is. So for the first few years, first 8 years of that, under a Republican governor, we funded education by inflation. But back in about 2009, 2010, Democrat-controlled legislature and governor's office said, gosh, we found this little loophole, and we don't have to fund education that way. And so for the last 14 years, legislatures and governors have not been fully funding education when we had a constitutional requirement to do so. So now here they are with the statutory provision saying, we need your TABOR refund check, even though we're sitting on close to $5 billion in reserves and fund balances, but we need your TABOR refund check so we can fully fund education. Do you trust them? Because I don't. They were already supposed to be fully funding education, and we have the funds to do so. But they fail every year to vote for full funding of education because they choose to fund other programs that are more important to them than education, which is appalling to some of us. Is there time on that? All right, let me just finish up with this. So, it says, the proponents say that renters are going to get a good deal here. Nope, renters don't pay property tax. And it's a joke on the Senate floor when we had this discussion about just because landlords are going to get a break. No, their property taxes are still going up. Renters are not going to get a break. Their rent is still going to be up, and it's probably going to get higher because property taxes are going up. The senior property tax exemption, you know what? It is a really good idea that you make it portable. In fact, it is such a great idea that a state senator from this area, Senator Liston, tried to carry that twice in 2 different sessions to get that portable. You know who voted against it? The Democrats. But now all of a sudden it's a great idea. It's just one way that they tried to bribe or fool seniors, which again is appalling, to vote for HH. We could have done everything in HH, and we should have done everything in HH in the legislative session instead of coming after your TABOR refund check. We don't need it. So please vote no on Proposition HH.
Obviously, this is a lightning round, and we want to have some time for questions. And if this panel didn't get some questions in your mind, nothing will. And by the way, Blue Book has been distributed, so you got a little cheat sheet to use for some Q&A as well. So start the gentleman in the back.
Okay. Well, first, Kevin, hello. I'm your former neighbor from Palmer Lake, Mark Westhoff, so nice to see you. I'm also, as I mentioned, a county administrator now, and so apolitical, right? I'm looking at the numbers, and right now we're doing our budgets. And I will say that when we run the formulas that are given to us in the proposition, schools, fire districts, they get pretty good chunks of the backfill. Other special districts, our county, we're a slower growing county, we might get a pretty decent backfill this first year. But again, running the numbers with our assessor and everything, going forward, we're unlikely to get really anything after this. And the only other thing I'd add is that from our budgeting side, we noticed that the tax rate in the past was before Gallagher was around 6.9, I believe. Is that?
No, it was greater than that.
Oh, when we did the math, I thought we used 6.9. Then it went up to, like I said, over 7. But then this drops it back down to 6.7, way down below. And so from the county budgeting side, we're looking at how are we going to continue offering services in the long term. Not next year necessarily, but in 10 years. And our rate, inflation goes up for everybody. And for us, we have lots of county employees who depend on us in an impoverished area, and I don't know how we're going to keep offering those services. Just, again, I'm trying to be apolitical on it. Like, I don't know how we're going to continue offering those services as the backfill falls away, and if we even get it in this first year. So I would say, just, again, running the numbers on it, it's maybe a little more complicated than being able to get all that money right away. So, and that's from the county, schools and fire districts get more. I get that.
So just a couple quick things. One, something that hasn't been mentioned at all is there's already on the ballot for next year a significantly draconian property tax cut with no backfill at all. That would be absolutely catastrophic for all of this. And so right now we're in a position where the legislature has created some stopgap measures over the next couple of years. But again, if this does not go through, the state is looking at a likelihood of Prop 50 passing next year, which would be draconian, and in the Constitution, which means we can't adjust anything. In this current iteration, when those things come up, because it is statutory, we can make adjustments. And so given that, obviously no one wants to see counties fail, and so those are the types of things that can be maneuvered in this particular measure, unlike a Prop 50 measure, which is going to be on the ballot in the future.
So let me just be clear. Don't count on a backfill at all. At all. There are provisions within Proposition HH, 20% here, 10% there. I mean, I'm not going to go into them because we don't have enough time. But when I tried to make an amendment on the Senate floor to fix it so that the base year would rotate, would go every other year, here's what Senator Hansen said. Local governments can't keep taking state money. It doesn't make sense to have an ongoing backfill for every jurisdiction. He basically said that within 2 years, they're not anticipating on backfilling any local government anywhere. And oh, by the way, school districts are exempt. And there's a good reason for that. Because if we didn't exempt school districts, the state would just have to backfill the school districts when we do the School Finance Act, right? So that's why they just exempted them. So the state protected themselves. So while the state, our Democrat colleagues and the governor put in Proposition HH a cap on revenues, because there's a cap. You know, we want to talk about a future initiative that isn't even on the ballot here. So let's get real here. There's a cap in this for local government. You want to know what kind of cap there is in for the state government? Nothing. Over the next 10 years, we get to grow our state government by $10 billion, and that's a conservative number. So don't count on a backfill. It's probably not going to happen. There's a 20%.
Tabor's already, we can't go that out. Tabor's already a cap.
So let me just explain, since he doesn't understand it. There's a cap that was put in place with Tabor when it was first passed, and there's a base. And if we collected more revenues over that base, we, meaning any government, you had to give it back. You had to refund it back. Then in 2005, a new cap came in. It was called the REF-C cap, and so it goes up like this. In fact, he had a chart on it. And then there's going to be a new cap called HH if HH passes. And here's the other thing that is so totally misleading. They like to say, oh, it's only going to increase by 1%. No, no, no. It still increases by growth plus inflation plus 1% compounded annually. So in year 10 of this bill, $2.2 billion is what should have been going back into your pockets is now coming into state government coffers. We don't need your Tabor refund check. We need to prioritize. There's plenty of money. We can make this work. They just don't want to.
So Rose, as a county commissioner, I'm sure it's concerns about the essential services that we're not going to be able to provide because it's going to take away from us. But don't we already have the ability through 108 to lower our assessment on mill levies and DG at the county level? Doesn't this eliminate local control?
Thank you, Tony, for the question. For those of you that didn't hear it, he was just talking about local governments having the ability to control their mill levies in order to give property tax relief, kind of my words, put it in your words. Yes, and so what I want to be very clear here is the state government gets $0 in property tax. They do not operate the state budget on property tax. Local governments, like your school districts, like your fire districts, your water districts, your county governments, that provide essential services such as infrastructure, public safety. When there's a pandemic, you went to your public health department that was funded with your property tax money. Those are the sort of services that local governments need to be able to provide. And so when the state comes in without any conversations with county commissioners that were in this room and talk about, hey, we're going to continue to grow, but we are going to constrain your growth and give you no backfill without even having a conversation about how that operates in these individual counties. That does take away your local control. And Senate Bill 108, this isn't a new problem. Gallagher was repealed in 2020. We knew there was a problem. Legislature stepped in 2021 with a temporary fix, 2022 with a temporary fix. I had 3 property tax bills to give us some time to put together the right people in a property tax task force, freeze the assessment rates so that we could have some real property tax relief while we figured out a long-term and sustainable solution. Because HH, even if it passes, is only a 10-year fix. And then we have no idea what happens in that 10 years. And as Senator Kirkmeyer said, this is a statutory fix, and I think Mr. Vick said it as well. This is statutory, not constitutional, which means the legislature can continue to tweak it, which of course they will do without, at least thus far, input from the local governments that truly rely on property tax to provide their essential services. It's wrong. Let local governments, we're sitting in a district where there's a mill levy override on my ballot that I get to vote on because my local school district had to determine what was best for it. And they are able to do that because they are the closest to the people. So let local governments continue to do, whether that's lower their mill levy rates, let them talk to their constituents and find the solutions that are best for each community. And each community across the state is very different. So thank you.
I would just say very quickly that local governments are still in charge of their mills. The provision in this does not, and it allows them to keep money above the cap as well through a very public process.
So certainly an essential issue here. I'm hearing from the back that we're actually hitting the clock, and I was keeping a tally of the order of the questioners. So Mr. Frisch, you actually have the last question.
Thanks for all your leadership. Do you see the difference between urban and rural communities and counties about how this proposition could affect everyone, or is it pretty consistent?
Thank you, Mr. Frisch. Always good to see you. I think it really depends on the rate of growth, and I'll see if Senator Kirkmeyer wants to finish this up. But rural counties just are growing at a slower rate generally, statewide, than the urban areas. I know I was giving this presentation to the Boulder chambers, multiple chambers, and the proponent, that one, said, it's okay, Boulder, you can absorb the decrease, so don't worry about it. Your essential services won't change, which I don't know how the state can say essential services in any county can't change. But whether you're urban or rural, I think it's really important that the local governments have the ability to control what is going on in their community and have the money that they need to provide those essential services, and they haven't had that ability. They won't through HH.
And I just want to remind everybody, we keep talking about local governments and backfill and those types of things. I just want to remind you all that what the issue is here is individuals who own property in this state at anywhere from a 35, which is a low percent, up to 70% increase in their values. And that's what's driving this conversation. I have a really good friend of mine who's 93 years old. She's been paying taxes on her property longer than probably everyone in this room has been alive. She wants to know, when does she get to actually own her property, and why does she have to keep paying exorbitant taxes on it? So we should really be addressing, working with our local government partners. They're not stakeholders, they're partners. We should have been addressing and working with them on how do we find a solution for this property tax crisis that every Coloradoan who owns property is facing. But we didn't do that. And here's the other little hidden gem in Proposition HH. If Proposition HH passes, your Tabor refund goes away, your property taxes still increase, we don't ever, ever have to go back to the voters again to leave it that way. Tabor essentially goes away. We don't ever have to go back. That's wrong.
I would just encourage people to actually read the measure, because a lot of the things that are being stated here today are being like in very stark sort of terms. And that's not the way the bill is set out. That's not the way this measure is designed. And so I would just encourage people to read it and make sure that they understand. For instance, your whole table refund is not going away, a very small percentage. So that's just one example. So thanks for your time and appreciate the lively discussion, and I'll turn it back over.
It's been such a robust discussion that we got special permission for one last follow-up from the back, and then we'll give this panel our big action 22. Thank you for coming down and spending this time.
So my question is, there's going to be a follow-up question. The other one, what if your county's already de-bruised? We went from 21% to 6.75%. What happens then if you're already de-bruised?
You still have to comply with Tabor regardless if HH passes or not. So if you are de-bruised, then there's provisions in HH that only allow county governments to grow by so much. There's a cap on the amount of revenues that you can grow. If you choose to go through a sort of public process, I mean, you get to go through right now, if you wanted to increase taxes in your county, you would have to go to a vote of the people. But in HH, they changed that as well. In HH, all you have to do is hold a public hearing, and then the board can vote, and you can increase your taxes. But if you increase your tax revenue above the limit that was set for you by the legislature in HH, then you get no backfill. And you have to do that every year. Every year. You have to go through that process. So, and I would just say this, again, with regard to everyone should read this bill. In fact, or this Proposition HH. In fact, I wish the legislature would have read the bill. Because on that last day, at about 8 o'clock at night, when the House was finishing up, and we get back over to the Senate, and we've been in a senatorial fight the whole day waiting for the House to finish this bill up, we don't even have the bill on our desk, and the bill sponsor is up there making a motion to concur with the House. We didn't even have the bill on our desk. That means 35 state senators didn't have the opportunity to read this bill. So I would agree, everyone should read the bill. I wish they would have read the bill, and I wish we would have had adequate public debate and adequate opportunity to do it. But the reality is this: a legislative council services, non-partisan group are the ones that tell you within 2 to 3 years, no more Tabor refunds. Because remember, it's growth plus inflation plus 1% compounded annually. The new cap goes away. Tabor goes away.
Okay.